you post pictures like of importance of fashion that goes way, way back, hundreds and hundreds of years into old Victorian times and the Romanian royalty and these way these people dressed and presented themselves. How does that fit in the importance in today's society? And why do you think it's so important that men adopt this concept of how important fashion really is in their lives and how it affects them?
I think we have a tendency to forget that most communication is nonverbal and most of it
Yeah.
is visual, and that we're very visual creatures. And this is actually kind of like the main thesis of what my TED talk was about, was the idea that it's biologically wired into us to judge things based on appearance. This is why in the animal kingdom you will have lions with big manes, or gorillas that have their silverbacks, or pufferfish that get
Mhm.
big when they're in danger, or you've got peacocks that are much prettier than peahens, or all of these other things. And so from an animal kingdom perspective, the two fundamental things that are being visually communicated are either I'm scary, don't mess with me, or I'm worth having sex with and I'm going to give you healthy babies. And this
Yeah.
is hardwired into us. But man is obviously much more advanced than what animal is, and just like we've we've created more than just the roar or the mating call, but we've actually created not only an entire spoken language but a written language as well. We've done the same thing with clothing, and we've got this visual language that historically most cultures were very aware of this. And so this is why I use these different references. And I published a book a few years back called The Appearance of Power, and a lot of what that book pulls from is these different references. It doesn't matter where you go to in the world or what point in history you go to. Honestly, even if you go to some of the most like primitive cultures that are in these kind of like idyllic areas where they don't need clothing from a physical protective standpoint, like from like to protect them from the elements, people will still wear some version of clothing, whether it's armbands or body paint or something else, as a way to communicate with other people. And men have always been a part of this. And this is ways to be able to signify what Jack Donovan talks about as far as like the tactical virtues, courage, strength, mastery, honor, these types of things. It's how people in different cultures could differentiate between the warrior class and the priest class, or like the serfs versus the aristocrats, and even how you could measure what rank it is. And we still do this on a subconscious level today. We all know if somebody's a police officer purely because of what his uniform is, right? Like, you don't need to guess or wonder if this guy's a cop, because he's in uniform. And
Mm.
so it's helping guys understand that this is a very normal, healthy aspect of interacting with people around you and developing your own sense of self. And we are in this weird kind of time and place in history where in much of, like, I would say mostly the United States, but even in Canada and other parts of kind of like Western culture, the only acceptably masculine attitude to have about your appearance is feigned indifference. But it's not true indifference, because if you were truly indifferent, you would just you'd wear your wife's clothes, or you would wear a garbage bag, or you would just wear like a big snuggy blanket or something else. You would look homeless. Like, that's not true indifference. But you have to care enough to not look like you care, because then you're gay or effeminate or whatever else, but also not so little that you look like you're a complete bum. And it's this very small window that we were all kind of stuck in. And it's really fun to help men understand that that window is actually a lot bigger than what they think it is, and that they will find a stronger sense of self. They will find more leadership and better communication, better relationships, and everything else if they start to expand what that visual language is in their own lives.
Why do you think in society today that they've like shamed and dampened? Because like here's an example, even as I should say early, not as far back, but as civilization as a whole, the depression years weren't that long ago, right?
Right.
And even during these years when people were living in poverty, men would still get up, put a suit on, go out, even if they were going to the bread line, they would get up, put their best suit, fix their hair, shine their shoes, and go out and hit the street and beg, wait in bread lines, beg for work, like whatever. They still, why do you think they've taken that sense of strength and pride from Western civilization, from men, trying to convince them that you caring about fashion is a negative.
I think it's the same reason they've taken all of our strength and pride from us and everything. It makes us a more docile, malleable culture of people that don't actually stand up for anything or rebel against anything meaningful. And it just makes us, I mean, it's the sartorial and visual equivalent of what they've done with our diets, with our screen addictions, with low T levels, with micro,
Mm,
like all of these other things. They're not going to leave any stone unturned. And so, of course, they're going to do it from all the power that comes from that visual communication, just like they're doing it with everything else.
absolutely. It's the subtle, uh, what would it be? Emasculation or demasculation of
Population,
Western
yeah.
men.
Yeah, because I mean, if you don't see, okay, think about like you said, the guy that gets in line and he gets in a suit to go stand in a bread line. They were still part of a dignity culture. The main thing that people were concerned with was dignity. And so it was humbling and humiliating to go stand in a bread line, but at least these men could hold on to some semblance of dignity because of how they dressed. We don't have that. We don't have that dignity. We've been robbed of so much of our dignity in almost every single way. And it no longer is something that's reflected in a job well done for a lot of guys. It's not something that's reflected in the way that women treat us. It's not reflected in a lot of ways. And it's also not reflected in what we see in the mirror. We just see somebody who just exists, but we don't see somebody who's dignified.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I was out today and I look in public on a day-to-day basis, and I'm blown away how just absent people are in their own lives and their own day-to-day
Mhm.
lives.
Right.
And it
I'm
really
doing
the
this
way
all
they
day, right? So why would I care about anything else if I can just be buried in my phone all day?
just gone, checked out
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah,
And it shows from the outside in. I mean,
absolutely.
the eyes are glazed over. This, you walk out your house and just throw this whatever you have, whatever that was at the top of the drawer on first thing, baggy t-shirt, cargo shorts, and some white tennis shoes. that's
Mhm.
that's like that's the visual that pops in my head when I think about a modern day middle class American man.
Yep, yep. And his whole
Sad.
MO with his clothing, I was thinking about this today too because I went to pick up my son from school and it was this like, you know, mock evacuation. And so all the parents were waiting in line for about half an hour. And of course, you're people watching while this is happening. And the
Mhm.
vast majority of men were dressed in a way that it was either, I don't care what you think of me, all I care about is my physical comfort, or please don't notice me, don't pay attention to me, and I just want to disappear and essentially just not exist. And I don't know
Oh,
any other culture in history in which either of those attitudes have ever been deemed as masculine.
wow, you really put this together really well. So, like, I have a lot of guys, like, we had a few questions in the chat, but like, what would you say to, like, how, because there's like, there's the rake, there's the warrior,
You want me to kind of give
rake
like
it,
a
the
breakdown?
rakish look.
Sure.
Yeah. And I want you to say a couple of character traits that go along with each one. So maybe some of the guys in the chat can identify it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So you guys, because a lot of times when we get to kind of like this level of the conversation, you kind of go, okay, yeah, like maybe this does make sense. Maybe I want to start doing this. Then the logical next question is like, what do I do? And I promise it's not start wearing a suit every day. That's not the solution, right? That may have been the
Mm-mm.
solution 100 years ago, but that's not the solution today. So the first thing to understand is that in order for this to actually work the way that you want it to, and to work in the way that Joe and I have talked about, as far as like it has to be that who you are on the inside and who you are on the outside actually align. You do not want to lie with your clothing. Most guys, and I'm
Congruent.
the same way too. I would rather dress neutral and safe and have that be honest than have it be really like aesthetically awesome and totally on trend, but have it feel like I'm lying about my clothing. I'm that same way. I think that that's a normal, healthy thing, is you don't want to be dishonest with your clothing. Okay. I call that extegrity. You want extegrity. You want who you are on the outside to align with who you are on the inside. So we start to develop that extegrity. One of the easy ways to do that is you can play with these 3 different style archetypes that I've been able to identify. Okay. So these are broken down in rugged, refined, and rakish. And the way that these work is for the rugged guys, it's you guys, Joe, you're very much this way, right? Grew up in a blue collar community, work with your hands, like you very much thrive in the physical world and do stuff on a physical level. This is when you're at your best. there are certain ways that you can dress, certain attributes of your clothing, fit, texture, material, all of that type of stuff that very much lends itself to that rugged archetype. Okay. The next one is the refined archetype. These are the guys who are at their best and thrive when they understand all of the rules and hierarchy and social structures and everything else that exists in civilization. And they're at their best when they play by those rules. They're the guys who can play the game and play it really well. And there's clothing that can represent that. And it may look different in a, this may look different if you work in a tech company in San Francisco than it does if you are a lawyer in Manhattan, but the principles will still be the same. Okay, so that's the refined. And then the third one, the rakish, is these are the guys who understand the rules and the hierarchy and the systems just as well as the refined guys. But rather than being at their best by following the rules, they're at their best by breaking the rules. And these are the guys that are comfortable being the outsiders. So these are the guys that are a little bit more entrepreneurial, a little bit more artistic, a little bit more creative. And so there's styles and different principles that can manifest and show up in that way as well. And so if you guys are wanting to better understand like how you start on this path, learn which of those 3 archetypes is your main archetype. I've got a quiz that you can go do that. Just go to masculine-style.com. And it's one of the first things that's on there is you can take that quiz, but that will help you get like a broad general direction. And then you can start to get more and more fine-tuned as you go through all these different processes that I teach and things like that you can go from there.
That's awesome. I do have the rugged background, but I tend to be more rakish in style.
Right. And nobody's just completely one of anything. It's finding the right balance of both. The rugged rakish blend is a really fun one to pull off for sure.
There's something about the look that's always drawn me in. Like when I see the rakish guy's dress, I'm like, yeah, he's got it. There's something about it that just says,